Good evening, folks. Late evening. It is just after 11:05. We are waiting on the maestro. That was Chris Clark, but nevertheless, it will be a good show. Just the A and the B team here this morning or this evening. Defeat in Tallaght. I don't know whether we're disappointed or we're more thinking about the chances we could have had. But to discuss all that, we bring in the main man.
And the reason we're late.
Look, it's better late than never, Chris.
That's it.
Obviously,
I think it's disappointing, Gally, because I think when you look at the opportunities we had tonight, and I think if you want to be in contention for the European places in the league, you've got to be taking them. You've got to be bringing it to teams when they're not performing well. And it's a cliche to say, but it's probably a game of two halves. First half, we have to, definitely the bigger opportunities. We'll come to, John Martin's chance and stuff like that later. But the fact that we didn't take that meant that we probably let Shamrock or Rovers off at halftime. And that was enough probably for Stephen Bradley to build on for his halftime team talk and come out second half, and we just didn't perform. We allowed them into the game. I heard both managers' post-match interviews there, and Bradley pretty much said that. He said first half we weren't there. We fair play to Dundalk, but second half we changed it up. We didn't rush anything. We played our game, and we took the extra touch where needed to stretch the game out a little bit more, and that was our undoing. And it sounds so basic, but it's probably right. That that's all it took was just a calmer element to play, and look, they take that one chance, big chance that they get. Obviously Shep pulls off a big save in the second half too, but I just think when that big opportunity came, which we probably had with John Martin in the first half, they took it with Pico Lopez in the second half, and that's all they needed to do. But the other killing part is probably everybody above us in the table took points tonight, and we didn't. Yeah, and that's the other, real frustrating element, I think, of tonight. That if we want to be in contention here, we just can't allow everybody else to get points ahead of us. We've got to stay in games. We got to drag out draws. We got to frustrate other teams, and to come away, play well, but get nothing. It's a bit deflating, tell the truth. We talk about this run in and stuff like that, about what we need and stuff like that, and definitely not dropping points tonight was part of that plan. So I think that's a bit disappointing for the team and stuff like that, especially with if you have aspirations of qualifying for Europe through the league, you got to get something in those games.
Yeah, that seems to be the takeaway thing from tonight, that you see a lot of on obviously on Twitter where League of Ireland would be very prevalent on a Friday night. It seems to be now the cup is where it's at. I don't think many people now are thinking after tonight's match, could we kind of get that third spot? Are we now looking at a cup run? And could we got a more favourable draw, albeit a first division team? Yeah, I think we can. I think we've hit a team. We're playing a team in Galway United that, I know we're skipping ahead here about tonight's match, but just about the cup in general. I think now that's what people are now looking to after tonight's performance. Even though we've had our chances, like you said, the first half, after maybe 20 minutes, I think we kind of found our stride. We talk about John Martin's chance, midway through the kind of 30-minute mark, but you need to be taking those chances, and because we have it now, we're coming off the back of, and in fairness, if somebody said 1-0 at the start of the season, you'll only get beat 1-0 by Shamrock Rovers. It's not that you take it, but you think, right, okay, I mean, we've obviously improved from the start of the season, but I think, like you say, the fact that we now find ourselves in a position where it's not that it all hinges on the cup, but that's what kind of already we're looking forward to. I mean, the cup's 2 weeks away, and we're already kind of saying, right, well, that's where we're going to have to put all our eggs in this basket, maybe, because a game like tonight, albeit only 1-0, it probably showed a little bit of clinical. We haven't taken our chances, and Rovers have. The chance they got, Pico Lopez said, they've had other chances, but we're into that business end of the season, like you say, where you've got to be clinical. It's a star comparison. Pico's head up, And then you've got Martin's header early in the 34 minutes, 35 minutes in the first half, and we've hit the post. And you're not clinical enough, you get punished. Even though it's a 1-0 win for Rovers, you're going to get punished, and it'll haunt us now. It'll haunt them probably for the weekend, Stevie O'Donnell. And it's such a pity. Even a 1-1 draw you would have accepted, but it's just you're not disappointed because we played really well, but it's not something we wanted after the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think you take those kind of moral victories at the start or even mid-season. Sometimes you can say, look, we're not playing great, but we weren't hammered, we weren't played off the park or anything. But at this stage, it's not about, and I said it after the Sligo match, sometimes it's not about playing well, it's just getting the 3 points.
Yeah.
And that's probably what Shamrock Rovers will say. Shamrock Rovers fans will say tonight, say, look, we didn't play well, but we got away with one. Yeah. All 3 points, Derry draw points, happy days. I think the other thing, like just to go right back to the very start, we 2 changes again tonight. Muller and Sloggett coming in. It's still a lot of changes, isn't it? Like we used to see Stephen Kenny and even nearly Stephen O'Donnell's first season, you could nearly pick the team. You nearly knew who everyone was going to be in a position. It still strikes me that maybe Stephen isn't 100% certain who he wants in every position. And I understand you probably change formation, tactics, and personnel depending on the opposition. But it's a lot of interchanging a lot of the time. You're probably looking and you're going, there's Leahy and McCourt, both starting from the bench. There's both our left-sided players who've been vying for that position all season. Neither of them in the team tonight. So is that an imbalance right from the start?
Yeah, and I found it strange. Leahy in particular. Now I don't know if I don't know. I missed the kind of the build-up, but Leahy in particular for me is a surprise because, if it's almost like a Pat Hooban. Maybe look, it's just a run of form, but it's almost like a Pat Hooban situation where you'd expect, if he's 99% or 90% or 85% against Rovers, you'd expect him to play to start the game. And it's like you say, there's a couple of changes that I'm not saying you have next week's game in mind or the cup in mind, but a game like Rovers in Tallaght. If you want to have any aspirations to finish in that top 3, that little nugget of teams at the top, you've got like, I don't want to be hammering the subs, and it's a good point you made, but can we afford? We don't have a team or luxury where we can afford these changes. We got to go with the best that we have, and maybe Stevie on the night felt like this was a best. And look, it's only 1-0, but I think it's on the higher end of the field where we've been disappointed that we haven't taken our chance. We've had plenty. Durant's come on later in the game, has been excellent. But I don't really know what Stevie's idea is now. I'm kind of lost as to why the substitutes are made. Even when you take Rovers into context of what kind of team they are, I think 1 or 2 players could have played instead of the lads tonight. And it's not that they're strange; these lads are well fit for it. But I'm struggling to figure out what kind of team he's going for, what kind of way he's sending them out. And look, we said it a million times. Hindsight after a game is great to ask these questions, but even at the start, I think there's a few raised eyebrows on 1 or 2, and if they win 2-0, then it's a masterstroke. But it seems to be a thing that it's happening on more than often, and it's just a little bit kind of strange. I suppose is probably the only way of putting it.
Yeah, it's like he's not convinced on certain personnel.
Yeah,
and therefore, when it comes to tonight was a big game. Like, did he not trust certain players to put them in there, and he had others ahead of him? Like, we understand the Pat Hooban one. We know he has that tie string. We know he's managing that.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, but we saw that frustrating element then of John Martin. When John Martin plays with Elliott, with Hooban, we see a really industrial player. We see a player get into the correct positions and, perfect run. He went on scoring key goals in numerous games just before this, and he went on a great wee run. But it just seemed like tonight when we had an opportunity having another striker in there. Like, did we start the season too light without a striker? Without, obviously Elliott not knowing this league, and then goes and gets that bad injury. We knew last year when Pat got injured that we struggled in this position when John Martin was in that squad. So we knew that we really needed something in there. And I know the whole league is looking for out and out goal scorers and that. So don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But did we prioritize that enough? I don't know. Is the answer from myself on that? But I just think it's just another one of those that, because we don't have two fit attackers to play with John Martin, it's a change of formation, it's change of how good we were getting from John Martin previously. He kind of pushes further up, or sometimes he plays better in number 10 and behind someone like Elliott who's just going to run all day. So it's those little things that we're finding he's having to tinker and change each game as it comes. First half of last season, I don't think that back 4-5 changed, including Shepherd in goal. It was Macari, it was Conley, Boyle, and Leahy. Never changed. We knew exactly what that formation was going to be. Right now, if I asked you to name what the back 4-5 is going to be, outfield players even for the next match, you'd probably struggle. Yeah. Because we've seen Hayden Mother coming back in tonight.
Yeah.
So it's...
And you've also got Boyle on the bench as well, which seems...
So it's
for a big game like that.
Exactly. And I just think that's part of the problem that Stephen O'Donnell has, is for big games like this, is it a thing where he is looking for certain characteristics in people's personalities, and he just didn't think he had it with some of them, and hence why people were on the bench. I don't know. Like, it's very hard to say, and when we're in the last rounds of games and we're still unsure about that, that's part of, probably you'd have to say, it's a flaw in the squad that probably Skip just never got a chance to fill those gaps.
And look, and it's not like players have, there's some really good individual performances. Like, Dickie Kelly's been there. I thought Mali had a good game. Mm-hmm. We kind of spoke. I remember when we the Hog and come in, we kind of thought this 10 role. I'm not so sure now. This is the third time I've seen him playing it, and I'm just not so sure he has a big enough impact in that 10 role. That's not to say, look, you're playing against a Rovers team that are excellent. I don't know whether there's an option for maybe to go back out to the wing if he has that electric pace that he used to have. I don't know, but there's some really good. Illy Cook in the early, late in the first half, probably early in the second half was very good as well. But there is that little bit of vulnerability in us. That, like, even Greg Slogger tonight, I felt, wasn't at the races. He's good, but not what we'd expect of Greg. Look, the game can get to you. Tallaht's it's a massive game for anybody to go to. But, I there's a lot of kind of narrative tonight that we were the better team. I don't believe we were the better team. I definitely think we were better in spells. We probably have one or two more clear-cut chances, but I think it's probably an even game. The real thing that separates us is that Rovers are just far more clinical in front of goal. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not like they've hammered us either, but I just don't buy that we've been a better team. I think there's been very good individual performances. I thought Durant was excellent when he came on, but even if we go back to John Martin's miss in the first half, like we mentioned, he's in for Pat Hoban, who's injured, but I mean, it's Pat Hoban you really want that fall into, isn't it? Or, a centre half even, but I know that obviously that's not the case for it, but it's just, John Martin's had a great season, but just hitting the post, it's just so unlucky. It's just if you're not clinical enough, it comes back to haunt you.
I think that's just it. It's about being clinical in these matches. Like, the initial cross comes in, Dickie Kelly goes for he's kind of pushed out of it. Greg Sloggett does really good to recycle the ball, gets it out to Davis, who we've seen receive the ball in that sort of position before and put in a good cross. I think there's a nick on that one from the defender, so it kind of loops up and it sits up perfect for John Martin at the back post. And like you say, Pat Hoban, we probably that's been his career type of goal, isn't it? In between defenders or just being over the shoulder of that defender and heading it down in and not giving the goalkeeper a chance. And we never compare John Martin with Pat Hoon because they're, you know, completely different players, whatever. But when you're playing in that position and that role, he you know, you got to take those chances. You got to be clinical and like you say, you're not going to get a better chance. And if you score that one, you know, it's a different team talk at halftime for Bradley and for Shamrock Rovers. It's a different one for Stephen O'Donnell as well, because he's probably saying, look, lads, more the same, and, you know, we can win this. But obviously with the tweaking formation that Bradley makes, then we look not overrun, I wouldn't say that, but we definitely just allowed them to get into the game. That in the first half in particular, I thought they were, you know, they weren't at the races at all. And we just, when you're playing,
we need to take advantage of that, don't we?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say.
We're not known for that this season. We've got to take advantage of teams that are kind of having even a poor few minutes. We just don't seem to have that little bit of that cutting edge that just, you know, puts teams to the sword for that lack of ability they had in the first half.
Yeah, and I think we've seen that in Europe as well, didn't we? Like we've seen us have opportunities against KA, and we just didn't take them. Yet we give those opportunities back to them, and they go and they stick it in the net. And that's the difference. And this is kind of the same on that same sort of level. When you get these chances, you just have to take them. Now, if we had scored that one, could we have seen out this match? Very possibly, because I didn't think they were great. I didn't think they were great at all. But when you don't take it, eventually the law of averages will say they will get a big chance to score, and Lopez, you know, does score it in what was that, the battle of the internationals? On that corner. It's, you know, he beats Ainsley, you know, the Cape Verde beats Gibraltar in a battle of the internationals for a header. And you know, the sad thing is that, you know, it's very defendable. When they look back on this, it's a ball in towards the front post. There's 2-3 players around there. Obviously Ainsley's a little bit flat-footed because he doesn't get as much purchase into the air as Lopez does, who gets a great flick on. You can see he's kind of battling for it after, trying to nearly pull or knock Lopez off kilter slightly, so his header won't be as firm. And I think that's a, you know, that's the difference between it. That he wanted it more. Really, he wanted it more, and he got there. But there's 2 players also with that front post. Got to be seeing that out as well.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
That's the real disappointing thing, that it's very defendable. You know, Skip said in his post match there, you know, set pieces, things that we can work on, we can defend on, we should be better on, and that's the thing, because, you know, that's what they always do for him. They play it into the near post. Stephen knew that, and yet we still seem to switch off slightly and allow them to have that chance for him to get ahead of Ainsley for that and get it in. But
I think the disappointing thing, although it's a great ball in, it's because it's gone in straight, and it's the first header. It's not like there's a bit of a scramble or a first header, you know, near post and it kind of goes back. It's, you know, you're just caught on the first run, and it kind of begs the question then, you know, like, you know, would Brownlee mark him, or if Boyle was there, would Boyle, you know, you have all these permutations in your head. And look, we're not knocking Louis. He's fantastic.
No, look, he's just beaten to it. Like, he is just beaten to it. And look, it can happen to anybody. I just think, could one or two of the players in front of that, can they see that happening and maybe drop back slightly to help him, because you can see him clearly run around. I'm struggling to think who it was. Right, it might have been Davis and Dickey. I think might have been the 2 players at the front post. Could they have looked over the shoulder and seen Lopez looping around at the back and maybe take a step back and come into it, rather than by the time they look over the shoulders, you can then see that Ainsley's kind of struggling and he's not going to make it. It's a great header, don't get me wrong, but very disappointing. I missed the build up to it, but I seen a couple of fans giving out that we even conceded that corner just before it. So if that is the case, that's even more disappointing.
Yeah, that's the gift. It always seems to be an extra kick in the teeth when it's Shamrock Rovers involved. Even, like, you know, even on that conceding a goal, you know, if they had have kind of, look, we said this before, you go in at half time, Stevie says whatever he says, but if they just could, if they had, I know the 15-minute break and you got your half time, that kind of kills the momentum, but if they kind of come out in the second half, like that, Rovers probably started slightly stronger second half, not by much, but then, Dundalk, we did get into it. I thought there was one, like Dickie Kelly, I thought had a very good game, running ragged at one stage, but again, we just seemed to be, there was some sloppy passes. No, we didn't have a bad night at the races when it came to passing, but there was just one or two that if they just had took a split second more, now you don't always get a split second on the pitch, but just to see it another ball, there was a chance, I think it might have been Sloggett to Darrell Hogan. Actually, that's a lie. It could be John Martin to Darrell Hogan. And he probably should have played in Dickie Kelly, and he didn't. And it's little things like that, you'll kind of, they'll probably analyse it over the next couple of days and they're watching it back. But, I think a bit more relaxation almost from the lads. Just take your time, be aware of people around you. And we probably would have had even better chances, more clear-cut chances maybe, than what we ended up having. And,
it's funny, that seemed to be what Bradley gave out about Shamrock Rovers playing in the first half. He felt it was way too rushed, the way they were playing. And when they finally did take that extra touch in the second half, they controlled the game a lot more. Like I say, and yeah, actually just right on Vincent. But I didn't think they were anything special either, that Rovers team. Absolutely not. Like we just gave them that opportunity to score the goal. And just on Darren's previous point there on Ansley, maybe just being a little sloppy over the last few games. I do feel maybe it's just the new centre-back pairing is taking a while to bed in. I thought him and Boyler probably looked a little stronger of a partnership because maybe they just had more games together. I'm unsure. And when he came back from that long-term injury him and Boyler seemed to strike up a good partnership very quickly and obviously played the majority of the games together. Maybe he just thinks is Brownlee too similar to Boyle that those two can play together? It'd be interesting, but you would have thought tonight when you knew you were going to be in for a bit of an aerial attack from set pieces from Shamrock Rovers. We know, Gaffney's good in the header. Obviously, he has that header chalked off for offside early in the second half as well. I wonder, was it a game for Boyler tonight just with that extra bit of, a stronger stature and maybe better in the air? Could that have been something? But just when I seen Darren's comments there,
barring probably, like barring an injury, barring something that's just not maybe 100%, you'd expect for a game like that with a man with so much experience. Look, I think Brownlee's actually been a really good addition. I think he's a really strong centre back. I think he dictates the play really well. I think he's guilty of probably being a little bit rash, but I think he's excellent. But it's hard to kind of say, right, do you put Boyle in for Ainsley or do you Brownlee? I think Brownlee's probably going to get the nod maybe, going forward. I think he's been brought in for a reason. But Boyle in particular, it's a strange one for the game that was in it.
I think me and Jason are on the same point here.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there's just no nonsense. I mean, it's kind of like the Conley situation. I'm not comparing them to Mark Conley, but that type of they're just there to defend. They're made to be defenders. That's what they want to do. There's a bit of ball playing in them, and there's a bit more ball playing in Ainsley. That can be.
I was going to say, I think that's probably exactly what it is, though, isn't it? Because Ainsley can carry the ball out.
Yeah.
And we did see him score obviously a cracking goal before when he had the confidence to stride out of defence and to carry on. And you definitely wouldn't get that from Boyler. But in a game like that tonight, I wonder, would that have made more sense tonight? Like I think if we're talking about changes and stuff in the starting lineup, if Ansley had to be on the bench and Boyler start, you probably would have gone, I can see what he's done there. Yeah. Sort of a thing, But I think that's the only formation we haven't seen. Yeah, am I right? We haven't seen Brownlee and Boyle start.
No, exactly. But even I don't even know if Rovers even kind of said they don't really want to deal with the Brownlee fella because Gaffney seemed to latch to Louis all the time. So they obviously felt that he can get at Louis. I don't know now, maybe just the snapshot that I seen, but he seemed to always latch to him for kickouts, for goal kicks, for free. They always seem to be. And then that one time when Pico, he's marking Pico. So look, it swings and roundabouts. But maybe this obviously maybe saw flaws. But that's it, Jason. No nonsense. Like. It's kind of old school, but I mean, God, that's what it is. I mean, you gotta put your boot in where you gotta get stuck in straight away. And Yeah, look, even the point with Jay saying it could have been 4. You know, we definitely had the chances to score, to definitely, you know, be at least 2 anyway. You know, if you take all your chances, maybe, but I think that's what we're just missed. That, yeah, the word clinical keeps coming up, and how many times have we sat here and just, if we'd only done this and we'd only done that.
Yeah, I was going to say you know, you look at it, so like it's a poor team we play, but it's soft goal we concede. Like this is definitely, like Jason just said, it's the story of the season. So you know, Jason's point there, we could have been 4 up at halftime. Rovers were very poor, soft goal, but that's been the story of our season. We're missing a bit of steel when defending, missing a clinical edge and belief. We had some great passages of play though. Like I think that's probably it. Like when Stephen looks back on it, he's probably going, like, this is great build up, great sense of play. We held on to the ball when we could. We created chances when we could. We stretched the opposition. We're just not being clinical, unfortunately. And sometimes that then spreads in to the opposition. They're kind of saying, well, actually, if you know, like we've seen it, was the Shelbourne match and that before, like, and the longer that match went on and we didn't take all our chances, we were allowing them in, and you know, they scored, and it was a late Tallaght goal, got us a point there. But it's the same sort of thing. It's just like we gotta just, we're missing that little bit of, like Jason said, just being clinical and putting away a team. Like, I know we put away Pats at the start of the season, but that was obviously a complete blip when you look at Pats.
A good blip for us and a blip for them.
Yeah, a really good one. But we haven't been that clinical in any other match.
Yeah.
You know, we just haven't gone, well, that's how we want to play. There's been late comebacks. There's been, you know, gritty performances. There's been, I think, even the Sligo game the previous week, I don't think we played great, but, you know, easy win. I don't think they're ever going to get back into it. That's been more of the story of the season, is we've either gone behind and fought our way back into a match, or we've had a lead and we're, you know, biting our nails to see, well, we hold on here, well, we give them the opportunity to equalise, and sometimes that has happened, and that's why we're not, you know, further up the league or really in the mix for this. And we were talking about sliding door moments all season long, and I wonder if tonight is just another one of them. We had won tonight, we were on the coattails of everyone else. You're 2 points behind Bows. You're really putting pressure on them teams above us, that if they lose, we're ready to kind of take advantage of that. But is it now, you know, I think we're looking at 5 points. I'll bring up the table now shortly. Is it we're just a little bit behind these other teams? And when you look at it, Bows, you'd say, probably aren't fantastic at time to give up plenty of opportunities, but if you give off a Labby something, he'll take it, and they'll get back in, and they got a credible draw tonight. And I think Pats were pretty poor tonight, but with Joe Redmond back for them, they don't look like they're going to concede. And he ended up scoring a winner tonight for them. You know, only a 1-0 victory in the bowl, but that's probably all it needs to be for them to just keep that pressure on. And there you go. And you got Shamrock Rovers obviously with us tonight, not play well. There's 3 points. There you go.
Yeah, Frank Cowan again. Just like we spoke about this before. It's, you know, we're at the stage now where I think we said this maybe 6 or 7 games ago. Unless there was an absolute upward trajectory in the level of ability and ball and, you know, football on the pitch, it's actually going to be, whoever wins the league, it's going to be a pretty poor league all around. You know, there hasn't really been anybody setting it alight. I mean, yes, look, there's been individual players and, you know, there's been some cracking signings made, but there hasn't really been anybody that said, look, these are unbeatable, or these are going to absolutely take everybody to the cleaners. And there's that word again, clinical. And I think that's going to be the story of the season, just overall. I mean,
I think so.
We conceded some dodgy goals, but we've had so many good chances that we just haven't been able to kind of put away, and, you know, not put teams to bed, but just get that little bit of edge. You get a little bit of, you know, right, we're here to play. Well, you know, we're going to take his, you know, at face value, we're going to try and go 1-0 up or 2-0 up, and we just haven't seemed to be. And it is that word. It's just that clinical nature that we used to have, and you know, it's frustrating.
Just an interesting thing. Like, I've had plenty of this conversation with people over the past few weeks, and if not all season, just on Frank's the first part of Frank's thing there, this is the worst league in the last 20 years. Is it though? Because we've seen when we were dominant before that, we had a very good Cork team push us. Name anyone else that was good in the league after that.
Yeah.
Like how many keepers did Rovers go through during that time? They couldn't settle on a keeper. End up having to bring Manus back in. They were absolute shambles. Bows had one good season where they qualified for Europe, and they had Georgie Kelly. Otherwise, they were pretty anonymous for the rest. If you look at the table right now, you've probably got 4 teams who still have a chance going into the last 8-9 games of winning the league. I actually just think,
or probably albeit probably not playing well enough.
Yeah,
it's probably more of a look at maybe the other teams that. How poor they
that's
are.
it. Like I don't think the gap between some of the probably if you take out UCD, maybe a bit of Cork. Like Cork completely imploded tonight. Like obviously I was in United Park tonight and they were 1-0 up, got a player sent off and lost 3-1. Like they just completely imploded, and Buckley just looked like post-match interview he looked like he was just done. To the truth, he was just like, like coming up here where I wanted to steal their manager, he says no, and then he tonks me. Like, that's a bitter pill to swallow right there. But I see Frank just come out. The worst team won tonight. He's probably right. But I just think that perhaps Shamrock Rovers aren't a great team. But I think the gap between Shamrock Rovers previously and Derry, Pats and Bows is definitely closed up. And unfortunately, we haven't been there to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So it's poor in a sense of looking at ourselves that we were probably last year, were we much better of a team. I think we were definitely more clinical last year. I think you could say that. There was players who were probably taking who were a little bit more critical for us and took advantages when it came, and that got us up the league. But in the end, it was around this time of the year we went to Tallaght for thinking, hey, are we in a title race? And we took a tonking that night, and we realized no, we're definitely not. But you think of the investment that they have had in their squads over the past few years, that Derry have put in definitely the last 2 seasons there. It's very, very hard for teams to compete in that. But I think Pats have definitely closed that gap a little bit in bringing Forrester back and stuff like that, and keep holding on to players like Joe Redmond, and they've been really good that they've been able to sell on some of their real good talent. Like Pats have an incredibly good academy structure going on there, that they're constantly bringing out young lads and then being able to sell them on. Over the past week, couple of seasons there, we're looking at Banquet and that now even getting into starting lineups. Bows, you could say, is the same. I know you've got the link in with Kevin's and everything else going on there, and that's always been a conveyor belt for Dublin footballers in particular, but definitely high level footballers in this league and further afield for a long time. And you've got the likes of James Clark and that coming along. We definitely don't have that. And even Shamrock Rovers to a certain extent, like Emaku, who they sold to Millwall, like he was scoring, so there's investment back in there. Farajai, isn't it? The other player they just sold this week then as well. So you can say, like, I'm just naming 1 or 2 of those, and you could say, well, Bows only stole great enough, or Derry stole great enough, elsewhere in the league, but there's still plenty of young talent up there too.
But we don't seem to be stealing them. Do you know that kind of? We're not. We used to be that team. Stephen Kenny used that. I remember Stephen Kenny running off a list of players. I don't know what interview it was, and I don't want to go back to that kind of era, but he used to name. But I never heard of these players, and now we can see them come to fruition now. Like, the first person I ever heard mention Neil Ferrugia was Keith Stephen Kenny. I never heard of him, and he was talking about this guy when he was like, UCD youth level, like, that we just don't seem to be able to get that pull. If you look at someone, you mentioned Sam Curtis there at Pats, ridiculous talent. Like, not that we should be signing him, but we don't seem to have. Look, we obviously had Ryan O'Kane, we'd Manny who scored for Norwich on the 19s. Is that today? I think that came in.
Yeah.
It's gone to draw. It hasn't played for us, but we just don't seem to have that little bit of kind of. The people are there. Brian Garton's probably doing great work behind him. We've got Tiernan Mulvaney on the 19s, but we just don't seem to have that little bit of nous that somebody out there saying, right, how do we sell this club to them? And I just don't know if we're that club anymore where people go, oh, I can't wait to go up there and play football.
I think that was partly there though. Like for years we got that under peak six because we could offer more wages than anyone else in the league.
Yeah.
So as a young player, if you weren't ready for that step up over across the sea or further afield, as it seems to be now, you could still get a good wedge at Dundalk, and that was a reason to come. But also, you probably have to look at it now and say, with shells in the Premier Division as well now, it's easier for young lads to stay, having played football in the Dublin Schoolboys League, just to stay there and pick any one of 4 or 5 Dublin teams, not have to uproot, not have to travel far. We're probably, I can't remember if this was something maybe James Rogers had brought up before, but I think if you're a young Dublin lad, you're probably having a look, can I play with Shamrock Rovers? Can I get in to the Bow squad? Can I get into Pat squad? If you can you get into the Shell squad? After that, you're probably going, okay, now I need to move out of Dublin. Now we're able to attract, so you're a couple of tiers down, where I think those academies have probably picked up the best young players before we get a chance to even get in there. I think we've seen Malahide have now taken that link up with Shells. As far as I was aware, that was one of our feeder clubs, but clearly not.
Their academy cheating on us.
Yeah, exactly. But isn't that kind of part of what we're kind of talking about as well? One, that was a Dublin club we had to link up with. Like, where are we for this northeast region attracting the top young talent? Yeah, we're just not doing that. I think that's something that we definitely have to look at, and that is, if that's a case, because it's not a route that we're going down currently. I would say that we're going for kind of solid League of Ireland players with a kind of plethora of loan signings or available free signings from the UK to fill out our squad. Towards, I think, if you look at some of the other teams, in particular teams above us, they've got top talent in this league, and then have a lot of good young lads, and then 1 or 2 signings outside of the league that they've brought in, and that blend seems to have pushed probably those 4 teams above us, and catapulted them even further. And that, if you can get good young talent like that, obviously there's no real settling in period because they're already at home. Yeah. And chances are, if you're in your 20s anyway in Ireland, you're still living at home. So you wouldn't have a house anyway.
We cover a wide range of topics here on the Turn It In podcast.
Yeah. This is what happened when I have to watch Drogheda for fucking 2 hours. But you know what I mean? I think that's an issue that we have to, probably Pingu and, won't like us mention this, but, the Cavan Monaghan set up there seems to have a good setup, and it's a wide net there. So why aren't we the top end of that? That if we're seeing great talent playing in those things, that we're making sure that we have a conveyor belt of good players from Cavan Monaghan and then Louth coming into play with us. But it's a rarity, I would say. It's been a rarity even under Stephen Kenny. That
it is,
Tiernan. It was probably the one that broke the mold on a lot of that. Before that, we would have had, obviously the Nathan Murphys, we had, Gary Breen, we had plenty kind of in there, obviously Griff and stuff like that. And there was plenty of young talent around, and I mean local young talent as well. But we haven't probably tapped into that in a long time now. And it's not something that you can just turn on and off. It's something that you have to continuously do. And I'm not saying, like you mentioned here, I'm sure Garts, I'm sure Tiernan are doing fantastic work. And you can see, Tiernan clearly has a really good crop in the under-19s there. Like, anyone keeping an eye on their results will see, the likes of Anthony Mayo and stuff seems to be, a real good find. We've seen Mayoa obviously, have a chance previous seasons. Doesn't seem to be getting a look in at all this year, but he's back with playing a bit of football in the under-19s. Something has to be. I think that's something probably we have to look at. How do we attract better young players to this to help? So that way Stephen doesn't always have to go to the UK market looking for key players. He should already know, I have such and such a player coming. They're going to be good enough. Obviously we don't know what Owen Kenny's going to be like as well. Obviously we've sent him out on loan. He looks like he's doing the job at Wexford. Yep. He's scored. Like, is he ready for first team next year? We don't know. Only Stephen had to say. But you'd like to think that we're now looking at this. Can Mayo play? Can Kenny come back in and really kick us on next year? And if you think those players could, brilliant. Because I think we need to get to a next level where the James Clarks, where many of the players that we just mentioned there were able to kick in and walk straight into these first teams, and even Manny there to a certain extent, exactly, walk straight into that and draw the team and then gets a move after it, and the club don't block them to allow them to get the move, but they'll make some money out of this, and it's win-win for everyone. I think that's something we have to do, because if not, what we're going to see is, if and when Evan Ferguson does move on, we're going to see Bowes get a fair wedge of money back in again. Are we going to see possibly any of these players that their paths have just let go over the past while, also with a sell-on clause? That's where we've come as a league now, and we've got to work and move with that, because I'd fear that we get left behind in that. When we finally put good academy structures in place, there's no point having a conveyor belt for these underage players if the end result doesn't mean that they're actually making it into a first team environment and getting first team opportunities.
Yeah.
Rant over.
I just know that it just brings me on. It just brings me on to point. The last line of Frank's message there. That thing of believing in it, that kind of are we guilty then of possibly even just? I know Frank's talking about the first team. But are we guilty of not believing in the youngsters? Are we guilty of not believing that, there's one or two in the under-19s that could maybe make that step up? Is there, because we don't see a lot of it. I know, look, we've no right to be questioning what Skip's doing and the boy and Podge are doing and the lads, but, is there maybe a case for not believing that as a group we're not maybe good enough in this league at the minute to challenge, like Frank says, or is it a general belief that, can we blood these young fellas now? Like Owen Kenny, for instance. For me, he definitely should have played more time for Dundalk this season. I'm not saying he should have been starting games, but we definitely should have seen more of him on the pitch.
That's why I was glad to see him do that loan move.
Yeah, exactly. And it's working out really well for him. So are we guilty of maybe not believing in what's coming up, what Tyrion's doing maybe? Or, is it just a waiting game? They just want to see till they just use every kind of maximum effort that they have in the first team at the minute?
I think we're stuck in a tough position, because like Frank had just said there, tonight now we're 8 points behind Rovers and we've lost that game. Previous to this, in European games, I've seen some of our fans would say we made changes too early. In the Sligo game, we made changes too late. We didn't freshen up. So Skip's probably stuck between a rock and a hard place of, if I make these changes and I bring in players, if it doesn't immediately impact the game, I'm going to get in trouble with the fan base, and then is my job in jeopardy. At the end of the day, that's probably the key thing for him, is getting results. It's not up to him to develop the young talent, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
he's all about getting something on it. But if we were in Shamrock Rovers' position and we're, further up the league, it's easier to blood in and get a chance. And I think when you're playing well consistently as well, it also gives a chance, because Stephen's probably always thinking, if I bring in a youngster and we don't get a result, and if they make a mistake, is that going to be too much? You don't want to knock anyone's confidence at that age in their ability. And you're stuck between a rock and a hard place then, because one, you need to give these guys an opportunity, but two, when's the right time to give them the opportunity? That's what I'm saying. Kenny gonna on loan at Wexford, brilliant idea.
Yeah.
Go out, play a bit of first team football, especially in the first division, where it can be rough and tumble at times, where it's not going to be easy for him. But the fact that we've seen him score goals at that level would tell me that perhaps he is good enough.
Yeah.
He is good enough for this level. And next year, I'd love to see him get a chance.
Yeah, and just on just a completely different point, I've just spotted James McEnany once Freddie Mercury for man of the match because he was at the Queen in the first store. Just to take the wee edge.
I'd have to give it to him for that. Can we just give it to him for that one? No.
You'd mentioned there, and I kind of, you can blood players in the league, as Aidan said as well, and the League Cup, it is a good look. It is a payoff spot if you're not planning on not that you're not planning on winning. That's to say obviously the young players, but it was always kind of that. League Cup, Leinster Cup, you always blooded young fellas in. But just one of the players that you'd mentioned your own loan signings in and free agents in, Sam Durant came on tonight. And it's probably the first time I've really had a look at it. We've seen highlights of it, but it's probably the first time I've had a real kind of, he got maybe 20 odd minutes tonight. He looks like a really, now look, I've said the same with other players. I actually said the same when I seen Han playing the first time. Remember him? Han, and he was a real lightning, but didn't work out for him. But, he's had a really good chance early on. And I actually fully expected him to bury it. I don't know if he just did, it kind of come off the. I just didn't kind of hit it right. It just didn't seem to have that power that it probably should have had from somebody running in. Albeit, akin, you want to kind of, if it's Darryl Hogan maybe coming on it, it's a different kind of shot maybe towards Manus. But he seems a real talent. Albeit he's early 20s I think, but he seems to be a real player that we can kind of harness that kind of speed and kind of almost Ryan O'Kane-esque, if I can get away with that one, that kind of winger ability. But he looks like a really strong player for going forward.
Yeah, he looks like a bit of a handful. He's full of energy. He's plenty of tricks about him. We even seen it on a very tough pitch when he had the opportunity to come on and Bray. In the cup match last week, we seen him. Probably other players weren't on the same wavelength as him one or two times. I think he was And that can only come, obviously, with more training and more games they all play together. But yeah, there's definitely something about him. You'd love to see that bit of creativity from him now, right up till the end of the season, to get a bit of a run on it, and we'll be interested. And this is the other side of it. We're seeing so many players, and even players who are no longer with us. They're getting more senior minutes now than they've had in their whole career, and that's very hard for them too. You could flip that over then and say, well, can we not give academy players the same opportunity? But you're probably talking coming from UK academies and coaching, different levels of coaching right the way through. It's an interesting one. But yeah, he does. Sam Durant looks like there's definitely something about him, and sometimes, in particular at home, when we've got teams who've just sat in front of us, he might be one of those players who, the likes of him, Darryl Horgan, sometimes they got the key just to unlock something. And look, the fact that we have him in and we're talking about, sometimes we just need that belief in him. He's definitely got the belief in his own ability. So, let him be expressive if we can, and see if he can get a run in his team before the end of the season.
And the only thing about it is if they're all kind of in form, I think it's a nice headache for Skip to have, because he probably hasn't had too many headaches of either real quality, selection from the same position. You've got obviously Ryan O'Kane went back, Dickie Kelly, you've Hogan, you've now got Sam Durant, you've also got my God, my name, John Martin. I had John Martin's name fall out of my head there. As an option on the wing as well. It's probably nice to have that, right? We've got a similar type of player. Albeit Dickie Kelly's probably that little bit more, probably pace-wise, probably got a little bit of an edge on everybody. But it's nice for him to have that little option of players who can get the ball on the wing, go past players, cut in when needed, like we've seen with Sam earlier on. Albeit, you want to be a little bit more clinical, but that's probably where not that we're strongest, but that's probably we have that more of an option, going forward, and possibly can probably even play in the forward role if needed. But it's nice to just have that little bit of pace and out and out kind of wingers, and because it's, as Stephen Kenny used to say, we mentioned him earlier on, he loves wingers, loves that play, loves that option, and it's nice that we have 3 or 4 in that option now, albeit Hogan playing at number 10.
Yeah, and to a certain extent, sometimes we complain that we just don't know what the right formation or whatever is in the middle. But when you think of Greg Sloggett, Conor Malley, Illy Coco, Paul Doyle, Alfie Lewis, still Robbie Benson to come back. Even in the middle, there's plenty of players in there that we're probably going to need a mixture of all of those between now and the end of the season. And then, like you said, we've got wide options now in a few players. You're kind of stuck then again if you're going to use John Martin then as a wide player. You've only got Pat Hooban and Elliott then as your 2 forwards.
I think John.
There's games we played both.
Yeah, I think his days of being used
and
as a
then
wide
Daryl
player
Horgan in the mix too.
Yeah. I think Horgan even tonight. I mentioned at the start of the show. That seems to be about 3 hours ago now, but we kind of talked about him playing that number 10, but I just don't know if that's. I just haven't seen it yet. I know it's early days, and I know he's only 3 or 4 games in, but could it be just let's put him back? Let's go back to where we know he plays, and let's just see. Maybe, I don't know, but I suppose
probably with Ryan's injury that opportunity then opens, doesn't it?
Exactly, and I just don't know whether we might get that electrifying kind of bums off seats when he gets the ball type of thing again. Look, he's had some great runs tonight and 1 or 2 great passes, but I don't know whether the option is there. Maybe just say, right, let's go back to what we know, and it's because we haven't seen a lot of him in England, so we don't really know if we're playing him on the wing, playing him in behind the strike, because we haven't seen enough games probably from him as we expected. It's a tough one to call, but maybe it's.
I still think then to get the best out of even Daryl Horgan in number 10, you still need a rock. In the middle of the park to play behind it. So if he's going to be expressive and he's going to take a gamble and he sees the pass that's, is it on, is it not on? But he's that player, he'll take that opportunity and that chance. If it doesn't work out, you need that enforcer into the middle of the park there who can guarantee to break up play. Like I watched, Gary Deegan tonight, and soon as Cork got a player sent off, the tempo and what he demanded off everybody, it was like tempo. He was telling people where to go and he was clapping to drive people on. He took fouls when it was needed to break up that play on Cork, and it frustrated them that they couldn't get in behind. But that's what we're missing. That allows, for Drogheda, it allows Dara Markey to kind of dance around and take those chances. We need someone who will allow Daryl Horgan to make those opportunities and know that if I lose the ball, there's someone behind me who is wise enough in this game, is one way of putting it, to see the game and break up opposition play, that they're not just running straight at us. They were not giving up silly opportunities for the opposition to score. And that's another thing I think that we're missing this year. We talked about having enough options up front. Do we know our best formation in our defence? And definitely we're missing. I think we've a lot of midfield players, but I just feel they're all very similar. They're same kind of thing. Like we've talked about Paul Doyle probably being the closest we have to that. But with injury and everything else and suspensions this year, we just haven't seen him get a run. And when you don't, we go back to the previous point then, Skip's like, well, if I put him in and something doesn't happen here, he'll be lambasted for playing him and it not working out. So it's you're stuck between a rock and a hard place on this. Will we start wrapping up and maybe have a look at?
That was just. I was just going to go with me. I just flashed up on notifications that Derry's draw tonight. So just going to that's our next match up in Oriel Park next week, and we kind of. Obviously we're sitting now in 5th behind Derry with an extra game, but
should be able to bring up
just before our massive cup match against Galway and the 2 boys on the sideline. We have Derry and Oriel Park. Let's see if we can try and bring this up.
Oh. Did it come up?
Oh, I interrupted you there, Chris.
It's coming slowly.
There we go. You walk away there. Go for it.
What have you done?
If you're listening back, we're having trouble with the screen.
Hang on a second. We'll go again and see if I can bring it up. It's just a gap that's formed between, the other teams and ourselves now. I think that's the biggest issue. For it, there we have it in. So Shamrock Rovers stay top on 54 points, 4-point gap back to Pats. Then Derry in behind that 47, same as Bows after their 2-2 draw tonight. So Bows in fourth, and then a gap 4 points back to ourselves. There's the real thing that could have been to 2.
Yeah,
if we had a 1 tonight. And I think we move off now. But Shells are playing Sligo over in Sligo tomorrow. If they go and pick up all 3 points, that's just them keeping close to us. I don't think Shells can really mount a challenge to get into that top. But you could be saying the same for us then as well.
Yeah.
And a big 3 points for Drogheda tonight, which probably condemned, I would say, Cork to the playoffs. Barring some sort of a miraculous run, I would say, from Cork. And the problem being there, and we'll find out in the cup very soon as well, is there's probably Waterford and Galway are quite strong for that league. I wouldn't want to be playing, if it's Waterford that comes through the playoffs, I wouldn't want to be that Cork team playing it, because they it's very tough. I think that you've got 2 games to save your season if you're in that relegation playoff towards Waterford to have the momentum of winning through all their playoffs. If they were that team, whoever that team is from the first division, I think you have to be able to win a couple of games in the Premier Division to show that when it comes down to it, you can see off a challenge from somebody else. But at the moment, you're struggling to see where they can even get a win.
And is Derry next Friday night? Is it a must? It's not probably a must win, but it's a must not lose, isn't it?
It's definitely a must. I would have said tonight was probably a must not lose also, and that has happened. But it's definitely one. You look and say since the European game, they've had a very tough week out of Europe, out of the cup, both in extra time and penalties. They were probably a little ring rusty today. That previously you probably were thinking that they could see out that sort of a game, and they've allowed Bows back into it, being the problem there tonight. And they have the opportunity and the personnel, like we said, just to see the way back in it. Like, I think if you look at ours there, so Derry this Friday, and then you've got the cup match Galway over there, then away to Pats after. You're probably looking at your next 2 home games after that, the Cork and the Drogheda one, as essential 3 points. You're hoping at that stage Drogheda have secured their.
If you can just be still hanging in there at that stage.
You just want, you'd like to think Drogheda would be finished and clear at that stage. But I would say both that the Derry game at home and the Pats game away, we can't lose them.
Yeah, absolutely.
If we've any aspirations,
that's probably where it starts. This must win games, or must
I think so. I think so. I think that's the key part for it all there, and they're the most important ones.
I think on the stroke of midnight, Chris, I think that is it for tonight's show. Can we give James the pizza for Freddie Mercury man of the match? Yeah, we never. Do you know what? I never even done a banner for the pizza, but we probably could. I'll bring that comment up. Where's James McEnany? Where is he about? There we go. So James, just by pure funny,
for us being annoyed at the result and everything else tonight, that's cheered me up.
The match, but sure, look, we'll take that. James McEnany, get yourself a pizza. Give Vinny a shout. We let him know you just won yourself a pizza. Yeah, you've missed the game. You've had a great gig, and you've got yourself a pizza. I mean, you can't really create much more.
He's had a good Friday.
He's had a cracking Friday night. So well done, James, on just winning the most random pizza ever given out on this show. So Chris, look, thanks very much. We'll reconvene probably after the Derry match, hoping for 3 points as we go into a cup game then against the mighty Galway United on the 15th. But you're
not missing out on something though.
Yeah, well, I'm going to thank our sponsors.
But also, it was a certain bucket collection today. I believe there's a Revolut there if anyone missed out.
There's a Revolut. I actually got the total. I got a total in earlier on, but I won't reveal it yet because there's a few more things that connect.
We'll share the Revolut.
We'll share the Revolut. Anybody wants to donate
on our socials now for the night.
We've had a few donations already, so if anybody wants to donate on the Revolut, we cover all bases. It's not just cash.
This is for the Castletown Bells, by the way.
Castletown Bells.
We just haven't mentioned it.
Additionally, I'm scoping money for myself. But yeah, Castletown Bells bucket collection, annual one. Yeah, so yeah, Revolut. We'll give all the details on the podcast social medias later on, lads. So yeah,
you're more than welcome, James.
Get some chips, get a drink. You're gonna be hungover after the Queen game tonight, so maybe have it tomorrow.
Yeah, man, I got a Philip box there the other day, top class.
It is savage. It is savage. There's not many you can pull off a Philip box.
That was a cracker.
Yeah, Chris, thank you very much.
Thank our
lads,
sponsors before you finish, will you?
We will thank our sponsors. Not Loud Village, Dundalk Village for our main sponsorship this year. Obviously, Tony, who's giving away fantastic pizzas every week to random tribute act go-getters who don't go and watch the match. And to play our fit for a fantastic year. I think we might be due a wee something else, maybe coming up to Christmas or something like that. We might get somebody sorted with something else. But until next Friday night, Chris, I suppose just leave it. Come on to town.
On the town.